All right, welcome to The Explainer. I am so excited to dive into today's topic with you because we are unpacking a seriously fascinating piece of research. We're looking at a massive, systematic literature review that dug through 18 years of data to figure out one absolutely crucial concept: personal resilience in the workplace. And more specifically, we're going to look at how our entire understanding of this concept was flipped completely upside down by the COVID-19 pandemic. We're literally going to trace how workplace psychology evolved from a pre-pandemic mindset to the post-COVID new normal. So let's just jump right in. So when you hear the word resilience, what actually comes to mind? I mean, for a lot of us, it conjures up this image of just, putting your head down, white-knuckling it, maybe chugging another cup of coffee and surviving silently through sheer willpower. But is that really what it means to be resilient in a professional environment? Well, today we're going to challenge that assumption. We are going to see how the academic data points to a massive paradigm shift in what it actually means to bounce back, especially when we're talking about the super fragile ecosystems of small and medium-sized businesses. Here's our roadmap for this explainer. We'll start with what resilience really means, then look at why SMEs are vulnerable, cover the pre-pandemic playbook, dive into the post-COVID paradigm shift, explore the dark side of resilience, and wrap up with building a resilient future. Okay, Section 1, what resilience really means, beyond the buzzword. To get our academic bearings before we go any further, the research explicitly defines personal resilience as the capacity to adapt and respond effectively to stress, adversity, and change to sustain well-being and achieve goals. Now, what's super interesting about this definition is how it connects to something called the broaden and build theory. Basically, this theory suggests that positive emotions and self-belief actually broaden our thought processes. They create this lasting, constructive personal resource. So resilience isn't just some static, invisible shield you hold up. It's an active muscle built through positive adaptation. And here is a really crucial point. We have to separate personal resilience from other corporate buzzwords. According to the data, individual resilience is not just a tiny piece of organizational resilience. And actually, no, it's not a subset of emotional intelligence either. They are totally distinct things. Personal resilience relies heavily on your individual traits, your attitude, and your social circles. Organizational resilience, on the flip side, is all about leadership, systems, and company culture. And emotional intelligence? Well, while it's definitely helpful, it's a completely separate metric. Think about it. You could be the most emotionally intelligent, empathetic person in the room, but still completely freeze up and struggle to bounce back during a sudden crisis. Interestingly enough, demographics play a surprisingly big role in building up this toolkit. Take age, for instance. The literature shows that older individuals actually tend to display higher resilience. Why? Because of the sheer life experience and coping skills they built up over time, even if their emotional intelligence levels naturally fluctuate. Then there's education. Sure, it boosts problem-solving and critical thinking, which is great, but a degree on the wall doesn't automatically guarantee resilience. And finally, work experience is a huge driver here. Working in really diverse or even highly stressful environments forces people to actively develop real-world coping strategies and genuine confidence. Moving to Section 2. Why SMEs are vulnerable, the fragile ecosystem. Massive global corporations have giant safety nets, but SMEs? They operate as incredibly fragile ecosystems because small and medium businesses face severe resource constraints and limited managerial capacities. A sudden market shift or, say, a massive global pandemic hits them so much harder. They are exceptionally vulnerable to external shocks. In an ecosystem this fragile, the personal resilience of an individual employee isn't just some nice-to-have HR perk. It literally becomes the essential shock absorber for the entire company. For an SME, an employee's personal resilience is quite literally a critical organizational asset required to survive. Section 3, the pre-pandemic playbook, looking at the years before 2019. So what exactly were researchers prioritizing before the whole world changed in 2019? If we trace it back, resilience was first brought into psychology in the 1970s as a trait for adapting to stress. But the literature review found that the pre-pandemic playbook, roughly the era between 2005 and 2019, was heavily focused on managing general day-to-day workplace adversity. Researchers and managers were just obsessed with resilience training programs meant to improve job satisfaction and keep people from quitting. It was all about productivity, just keeping the machine running. But then, the world experienced a seismic shift. Which brings us to Section 4, the post-COVID paradigm shift, our new normal. Okay, this is where the story gets incredibly compelling. the focus of academic research violently shifted almost overnight. Pre-2019, the main concern was keeping employees productive and satisfied. But post-2019, the urgent, screaming priority became combating severe emotional and social loneliness, dealing with skyrocketing mental health crises, and managing pandemic-induced isolation. Resilience was no longer just a tool to help you perform better at your desk. It was suddenly about emotional survival, psychological well-being, and somehow finding human connection in an incredibly isolated world. And the sheer scale of this shift is just undeniable: 9,530. To put that into perspective, that is the number of studies initially identified in the Scopus database by the authors of this review. Out of thousands upon thousands of academic papers, the data unequivocally pointed to one clear conclusion: our post-COVID new normal requires a totally different approach to resilience. The research overwhelmingly proves that modern resilience is about fundamental human connection and mental health support, not just hitting corporate performance metrics. Section 5. The dark side. When resilience actually fails. Now, before we look at the solutions, I really want to share this fascinating twist in the research because it completely reframes how we view this whole concept. We almost always think of resilience as a purely positive thing, right? But scholars point out something they call false hope syndrome. I mean, we've all likely had that manager who just blindly charges toward a totally unrealistic goal, completely ignoring the changing reality around them. This so-called resilience actually just exhausts valuable energy and time unnecessarily. It is a massive aha moment. Uncalibrated, blind resilience can literally become toxic and drain an organization's already limited resources. True resilience requires adaptability and reality checking, not just stubborn, head-down persistence. Finally, Section 6, building a resilient future with actionable strategies. So how do we actually translate 18 years of academic research into reality? Well, it boils down to 5 evidence-based steps for SMEs. First up, we've got to ditch the generic advice and integrate specific scenario-based training to prep employees for realistic crises. Second, because modern resilience is so focused on fighting loneliness, we absolutely must enhance support systems and institutionalize peer mentoring. Third, leaders need to be trained to adapt, developing adaptive leadership to avoid falling into that toxic false hope trap we just talked about. Fourth, organizations need actual formulated well-being policies that balance performance expectations with real psychological health. And fifth, adopting flexible work practices to give employees the autonomy to manage their own stress. And the great thing is, all of these practical steps are firmly grounded in the conservation of resources, or COR theory. Basically, this theory views resilience as a critical resource that protects us against the depletion of our emotional and cognitive reserves during hard times. Think of it like a battery. In an SME, where financial and physical resources are already super scarce, the emotional battery of the employees is truly the most valuable asset that company has. So those 5 steps we just walked through, they aren't just nice little HR perks. They are strategic necessities specifically designed to protect those limited emotional reserves. Which brings us to a final, slightly provocative thought. We've seen the data. We've seen how a global crisis forced a massive shift from treating resilience as a basic productivity tool to recognizing it as an absolutely essential shield for our mental health. We've seen that without the right structural support, SMEs are particularly fragile ecosystems. So I want to leave you with this question to really chew on. How resilient is your workplace culture? Does your organization actually have the necessary human shock absorbers in place? And are you actively protecting their emotional reserves? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.